Number 15. The fastest social transformation. There are countries that change slowly, like old cities adding one street at a time. And then there is Saudi Arabia, where some changes have arrived so quickly that even people living inside the kingdom sometimes describe the last few years as if they were watching their own society through a moving window. For decades, the image of Saudi women in the outside world was narrow and often frozen in the past. Many people imagined silence, restriction, and a life almost entirely shaped by male permission. And for a long time, that image was not created from nothing. Under the old guardianship system, many major decisions in a woman's public life could depend on approval from a male guardian. Travel, paperwork, certain official procedures, and daily freedom were often tied to family structure, tradition, and law. Before we go deeper into this kingdom, tell me where you are watching from right now. Drop your country or city in the comments, and let us see how far this Saudi Arabia journey is traveling. Then the ground began to move. In 2018, Saudi women were allowed to drive. To outsiders, that may sound like one legal change, but on the streets of Riyadh, Jeddah, Dammam, and smaller towns across the kingdom, it was much more than that. It meant a woman could hold her own car key, choose her own route, drive to work, pick up her children, meet friends, or simply feel the city opening in front of her without waiting for someone else to take the wheel. Imagine the first morning commute after that change. The same desert sun, the same highways, the same towers rising above the capital, but a different feeling inside the cars. Behind some steering wheels were women who had waited years for that ordinary moment. A traffic light, a side mirror, a parking space, things that might seem small in another country, suddenly carried the weight of history. Then came another major shift. In 2019, Saudi women over 21 years old gained the right to apply for passports and travel abroad without male guardian approval. For many women, this was not just about airports. It was about choice. It was about standing at a departure gate with a suitcase and knowing that the world beyond the glass was no longer locked behind another person's signature. The change has also moved into offices, banks, hospitals, hotels, airports, media companies, and technology firms. Female participation in the Saudi workforce has climbed to about 36.2%. That number is not just a statistic. It is the sound of office doors opening, university degrees turning into careers, and young women walking into meeting rooms where their mothers may never have been invited. In modern Riyadh, you may see a woman in an elegant abaya stepping out of a rideshare car and heading into a finance tower. In Jeddah, you may meet women managing hotels, running boutiques, guiding visitors through art districts, or building businesses along the Red Sea coast. In AlUla, female guides help tell the story of ancient tombs and desert civilizations to international travelers. In airports, cafes, museums, and corporate offices, the new Saudi Arabia is not only being announced by officials, it is being lived in small daily scenes. And if Saudi Arabia looks different from what you imagined, hit like and subscribe, because this journey through the kingdom is only getting deeper. Even the abaya has changed meaning. Once seen mainly as a symbol of obligation, it has become for many women a canvas of personal style. Some are simple and traditional, others are embroidered, tailored, colorful, or designed with the confidence of high fashion. In wealthy districts, one flowing black robe may hide a designer dress, polished heels, and a look prepared with the same care you might see in Paris, Milan, or New York. But this transformation is real, not a fairy tale. It is progress moving through a society still negotiating tradition, law, family, and ambition. Some women embrace change quickly, others move carefully. Some families celebrate new freedoms, others remain cautious. The old Saudi Arabia has not vanished overnight, and the new Saudi Arabia is still being shaped. That is what makes this moment so fascinating for a traveler. You are not visiting a country that has already finished changing. You are watching change happen in public, in real time, on highways, in shopping districts, in universities, in business towers, and inside homes where different generations may see the future in very different ways. Saudi Arabia is often described by its oil, deserts, and holy cities. But one of the most powerful stories here is human. It is the story of women stepping into spaces that were once closed, carrying tradition with one hand and possibility with the other. And once you notice that, the kingdom begins to look very different. Number 14. Riyadh, the city that wakes after sunset. By afternoon, Riyadh can feel less like a city and more like a machine waiting for sunset. The roads are wide, the towers are still, and the desert light presses down on the glass and concrete until everything seems to pause. In the hottest months, the temperature can rise to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, or around 43 degrees Celsius. That kind of heat does not simply warm the air, it changes the rhythm of life. During the day, Riyadh does not always reveal itself to a first-time visitor. The sidewalks can feel empty. Outdoor tables sit unused. The sunlight bounces from pale walls and polished windows with a brightness that almost feels physical. People move carefully from car to mall, from office to home, from shade to air conditioning. The city is not sleeping exactly. It is conserving energy, waiting for the desert sky to soften. Then sunset arrives, and Riyadh changes personality. As the heat begins to loosen its grip, lights appear across the capital like sparks waking under the sand. Families come out together. Children run ahead of their parents, coffee shops fill, and restaurants that felt quiet in daylight suddenly become stages of conversation, perfume, laughter, and late-night appetite. The city does not slowly return to life. It opens all at once. At Riyadh Boulevard, the night can feel almost theatrical. Neon signs glow above wide walking streets. International restaurants compete with local cafes. Music drifts through the air, and groups of friends move from one attraction to another as if the evening has only just begun. This is not the old image many outsiders still carry of Saudi Arabia. This is a capital city learning to entertain itself in public, loudly, stylishly, and deep into the night. And above it all stands the Kingdom Center, one of Riyadh's most recognizable landmarks. Its sky bridge rises nearly 1,000 feet above the city, or around 300 meters, turning the capital into a glittering map beneath your feet. From up there, Riyadh no longer looks empty or silent. It looks endless. Highways glow like rivers of gold. Towers shine in the desert dark. The city stretches outward in every direction, as if it is still being drawn by an invisible hand. If Saudi Arabia surprises you, hit like and subscribe for the next journey. What makes Riyadh fascinating is not just its heat, but how people have built a lifestyle around it. The sun may rule the afternoon, but it does not own the city. After dark, Riyadh belongs to families, drivers, diners, shoppers, dreamers, and travelers who understand that in the desert, night is not the end of the day. It is when the real journey begins. Number 13. Saudi weddings and separate worlds. To understand a Saudi wedding, you have to forget the simple image of one ballroom, one stage, and one couple greeting everyone together. Here, a wedding can feel like two worlds opening at the same time, under the same roof, moving through the same night, but separated by tradition, privacy, and rhythm. Among elite families, a Saudi wedding can cost millions of US, with luxury halls, designer gowns, rare jewelry, floral walls, private performers, and dining tables that look less like a meal and more like a royal exhibition. But for middle-class families, the celebration is usually far more modest, built around family, honor, hospitality, food, and the emotional weight of two households becoming connected. The difference can be huge, but the meaning remains the same. A wedding is not just a party. It is a public statement of family, dignity, generosity, and social belonging. In the men's hall, the atmosphere often feels formal, proud, and deeply rooted. Men arrive in crisp white thobes. Arabic coffee is poured again and again into small cups, its bitter warmth softened by dates placed nearby. Large trays of rice and whole roasted lamb may appear, filling the room with the smell of spices, steam, and slow-cooked meat. Then comes the Arda, the traditional sword dance, where men move shoulder to shoulder, blades rising and falling in rhythm, as if the room has suddenly opened a doorway into tribal memory. But on the other side of the wedding, behind closed doors, the women's hall tells a completely different story. Here, the mood can become dazzling, colorful, and unexpectedly glamorous. Abayas come off. Evening gowns appear. Some women wear Chanel, Valentino, Elie Saab, or custom pieces made for only one night. Diamonds flash under the lights. Perfume moves through the air. Female singers may perform live, and the room becomes a private world of music, beauty, laughter, and celebration that most outsiders will never see. Privacy is not a small detail here. It is part of the architecture of the event. In more traditional weddings, phones may be collected or sealed in privacy pouches so no images of women without abayas leave the room. For a visitor from outside Saudi Arabia, this can feel unusual at first. But inside that space, it makes sense. The closed doors are not only about restrictions, they also create a protected stage where women can celebrate with a freedom that would not exist in a public mixed setting. The bride does not usually make an early entrance. Her zafa, the grand bridal entrance, may happen around 1 or 2 in the morning, when the night is already deep and the room is fully alive. She may walk slowly through lights, music, and the eyes of every woman in the hall. Then there is the mahr, the Islamic bridal gift paid by the groom directly to the bride. In some middle-class families, it may average around $8,000. Among wealthier families, it can rise far higher, sometimes taking the form of gold, land, jewelry, or cash worth hundreds of thousands of $. But at its heart, the mahr is not simply a price. It is a sign of responsibility, respect, and commitment. And perhaps the most fascinating part is this. For most of the night, the bride and groom are celebrating the same wedding in different rooms. Only near the end do these two separate worlds finally come together. By then, the music has played, the swords have moved, the coffee has been poured, and two families have performed one of the most private public rituals in Saudi life. If this new chapter of Saudi Arabia caught your attention, support the journey with a like and subscribe, because the next stories may surprise you even more. Number 12. One company, but not exactly 2 trillion anymore. In the age of artificial intelligence, Nvidia may rule Wall Street. But deep beneath the desert, Saudi Aramco still reminds the world that oil has not left the throne quietly. This is not just a company. It is the Black River beneath modern Saudi Arabia. The hidden force that helped turn fishing villages, desert towns, and caravan routes into highways, airports, towers, ports, and futuristic cities rising from the sand. Saudi Aramco remains the most valuable oil and gas company on Earth, with a market value of around $1.7 trillion. To imagine that number, do not picture a bank account. Picture an entire nation being powered by it. Picture pipelines crossing empty deserts, tankers leaving the Persian Gulf, refineries glowing at night, and royal projects so large they seem less like construction plans and more like scenes from science fiction. This wealth did not appear overnight. It came from generations of oil moving out of the ground and into the engines of the world. Every airplane crossing an ocean, every cargo ship carrying goods between continents, every city depending on fuel and petrochemicals has, in some way, been connected to the stories Saudi Arabia knows better than almost anyone else. But the surprise is that Saudi Arabia is not only oil. The kingdom covers about 2,149,690 square kilometers, or around 830,000 square miles. That is a land so vast you could drive for hours and still feel as if the horizon has not moved. Inside it are red deserts, black volcanic fields, coral coastlines, mountain villages, ancient tombs, and new cities being drawn across the map with impossible confidence. The oil money helped build the image most people know. But now Saudi Arabia is trying to use that same fortune to build an image the world has not fully understood yet. Tourism, technology, entertainment, renewable energy, luxury resorts, archaeological sites, and mega projects are all being pushed forward at once. So when people say Saudi Arabia is rich, that is only the beginning of the story. The better question is this: what happens when one of the richest oil powers on Earth decides it no longer wants to be known only for oil? Number 11. Saudi Arabia and Snapchat culture. In many countries, social media is just a habit. It fills the quiet moments in elevators, cafes, airports, and traffic jams. But in Saudi Arabia, Snapchat is more than an app. It is almost a social architecture, a private doorway built inside a society where privacy still matters deeply, where public behavior can carry meaning, and where a single image can travel farther than anyone expected. Saudi Arabia has around 22 million monthly active Snapchat users. In a country with about 35.3 million people, that means almost 2/3 of the population is connected to the platform in some way. For travelers, that number is not just a digital statistic, it is a clue. It tells you that behind the polished malls, coffee shops, family restaurants, university campuses, and luxury hotels, there is another Saudi Arabia moving through screens, short videos, private messages, filters, maps, and disappearing conversations. Among young Saudis, especially those between 13 and 34 years old, Snapchat has become part of daily rhythm. Some users open it more than 50 times a day. Imagine walking through Riyadh Park, Jeddah Corniche, or a late-night cafe near Boulevard City. Around you, people are not only eating, shopping, and talking. They are recording the foam on an iced coffee, the glow of a perfume store, the sound of friends laughing in a car, the sunset over a desert road, or the first bite of a midnight meal. The city is being lived twice, once in the street and once on the screen. What makes Snapchat so powerful here is not only popularity, it is the feeling of control. Posts can disappear, messages can vanish, accounts can feel more personal than public. In a society where reputation, family, privacy, and gender boundaries still matter, that design fits the culture in a very specific way. It allows people to share moments without turning every moment into a permanent public record. This is especially important in interactions between men and women. In many public spaces, direct conversation between unrelated men and women can still feel sensitive, depending on the family, the setting, and the people involved. That does not mean young Saudis are not curious, social, romantic, or modern. It means the path to connection often moves through quieter routes. In some social spaces, a QR code can become a safer, quieter introduction than a public conversation. For an outsider, this may seem strange at first. In some Western cities, meeting someone might begin with a smile at a bar, a conversation at a party, or a direct message on a public profile. In Saudi Arabia, the same human curiosity can take a more careful shape. A glance, a shared space, a digital code, and then perhaps a conversation that unfolds away from the eyes of the crowd. The technology may be modern, but the reason it works is deeply connected to tradition. And that is what makes Saudi Snapchat culture so fascinating. It is not simply a story about young people copying global trends. It is a story about a society adapting technology to its own rules. The app becomes a bridge between old expectations and new freedoms. It gives people a way to be visible and hidden at the same time. It lets them show the world a meal, a road trip, a concert, a wedding detail, or a desert camp without surrendering every part of themselves to public judgment. Travel through Saudi Arabia today, and you will feel this digital layer everywhere. In Riyadh, influencers film luxury restaurants and new entertainment districts. In Jeddah, creators capture the Red Sea breeze, historic alleys, and night markets. In AlUla, travelers post sandstone cliffs glowing at sunset. In small towns, families record gatherings, food, rain, camels, mountain drives, and ordinary scenes that feel extraordinary to someone watching from another continent. But like many things in Saudi Arabia, this culture is full of contrasts. It is private but highly visible, conservative but creative, careful but expressive, local but global. A young person may wear traditional clothing, drink Arabic coffee with family, and still document the whole evening with the instincts of a professional filmmaker. So when you see Saudi Arabia through Snapchat, you are not only seeing selfies and filters, you are seeing a country negotiating how much of itself it wants to reveal. You are seeing a generation speaking in images, building friendships through screens, and turning private moments into a new kind of social map. And in a kingdom changing this quickly, sometimes the best way to understand the future is to watch what people choose to share before it disappears. Number 10. Zero income tax. But read the fine print. At first, Saudi Arabia can sound like a financial dream written across the desert. No personal income tax. High salaries in many professional sectors. Fuel prices that still feel low compared with many Western countries. Modern towers, new hotels, expanding entertainment districts, and job offers that can make a person in London, New York, Sydney, or Toronto stop and think twice. But Saudi Arabia is not a simple promise. It is a country where opportunity can be very real, but only if you understand the rules before the salary blinds you. Start with the part that gets every expatriate's attention. Saudi Arabia does not charge personal income tax on salaries. That means the money you earn can feel more visible in your bank account at the end of each month. For a skilled worker arriving from a high-tax country, That alone can feel like opening a window in a room that used to feel too small. Then comes fuel. Gasoline is no longer as unbelievably cheap as some old travel stories suggest, but it is still far less expensive than in many parts of Europe or Asia. Gasoline 95 can cost about 2.33 Saudi riyals per liter, or around $0.62 per liter. That is about $2.35 per gallon. Gasoline 91 can cost about 2.18 Saudi riyals per liter, or around $2.20 per gallon. In daily life, that difference matters. Saudi cities are built for cars. The roads are wide, the distances stretch, and a simple evening plan can mean crossing a capital that feels as broad as a desert plain. Housing tells a more complicated story. In central Riyadh, a modern one-bedroom apartment can cost around 4,162 Saudi riyals per month, or about $1,110 per month. Across Saudi Arabia more broadly, a central one-bedroom apartment may average around 2,192 Saudi riyals per month, or about $585 per month. These numbers are not just rent, they shape the whole rhythm of life. In Riyadh, you may pay more to live close to offices, malls, cafes, and the new entertainment zones. In smaller cities, the same income can stretch much farther, leaving space for savings, weekend trips, restaurant nights, and flights back home. That is why Saudi Arabia attracts so many foreign workers. For some, a few years here can do what many years in a Western city cannot. A teacher, engineer, nurse, hotel manager, construction specialist, or finance professional may arrive with a goal in mind: pay off debt, build savings, support family, buy property back home, start a business. The kingdom can make those goals feel suddenly reachable. And if Saudi Arabia's zero tax promise already caught your attention, hit like and subscribe, because the truth behind life here is far more interesting than the salary number alone. But the fine print is where the real story begins. Foreign workers do not move through Saudi Arabia in the same way a tourist does. Your legal status is connected to your employer, your contract, your residency paperwork, and government systems that must be followed carefully. Reforms have changed parts of the old sponsorship structure, and the automatic 3-year re-entry ban for some exit and re-entry visa violations was lifted in January 2024. That was an important sign that Saudi Arabia wants to become more attractive to global talent. But this does not mean the system has become effortless. Work permits, residency status, job transfers, exit and re-entry procedures, and sponsor-related rules can still shape your freedom in ways newcomers may not expect. A weekend trip abroad, for example, is not always as casual as booking a ticket and packing a bag. Depending on your status and employer process, you may need proper exit and re-entry authorization before leaving. If you are used to countries where your job and your movement are completely separate, this can feel like a major adjustment. Then there is the physical reality of the country. In the central regions, summer heat is not background weather. It is a force. On some days, the air can feel like it is coming from an open oven. In Riyadh, peak summer temperatures can climb to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, or around 43 degrees Celsius. That changes how you walk, how you work, how you shop, and how you plan your day. Outdoor life often waits for sunset. Air conditioning is not a luxury. It is part of survival. Saudi Arabia is also deeply car-dependent. Public transport is improving. But for many residents, daily life still happens behind a steering wheel. The driving culture can feel fast, bold, and sometimes intimidating to newcomers. Highways move with confidence, and it takes time to understand the rhythm. And yet, for those who adapt, Saudi Arabia can be transformative. It can offer financial breathing room, professional growth, modern comfort, and a front-row seat to one of the fastest changing societies on Earth. It is not a paradise, and it is not a trap. It is a bargain with the desert. The kingdom may give you money, space, and possibility, but it also asks for patience, preparation, and respect for rules that may be very different from the ones you left behind. So if you ever hear someone say, Saudi Arabia is an easy place to get rich, listen carefully. The better truth is this: Saudi Arabia can help you build a future faster than many Western cities, but only if you learn how the country works before the paycheck makes you forget to ask. Number 9. Camel beauty contest and Botox scandal. In most countries, beauty scandals involve celebrities. In Saudi Arabia, the contestants can have 4 legs, a hump, and lips full of illegal filler. Yes, this is real. In the Saudi desert, a camel is not just an animal. It can be a family treasure, a racing machine, a cultural symbol, a status object, and sometimes an investment so valuable that it makes luxury cars look almost ordinary. To outsiders, a camel may seem like a patient creature walking slowly across sand. But inside Saudi Arabia, the world of camels has its own markets, experts, festivals, rivalries, technology, and scandals. At large camel markets, buyers study animals with the seriousness of art collectors examining rare paintings. They look at the shape of the head, the curve of the neck, the strength of the legs, the size of the body, and the proud way the camel carries itself. A working camel may cost about $3,000. A strong racing camel can be worth hundreds of thousands of US dollars. And the most extraordinary camels, the kind bred from famous bloodlines and admired by wealthy owners, can reach prices that sound impossible to anyone outside this world. The center of this desert obsession is the King Abdulaziz Camel Festival, one of the most unusual cultural events in the kingdom. This is not a small village gathering with a few animals walking through the sand. It is a massive celebration of heritage, wealth, competition, and national pride. The prize pool has reached hundreds of millions of Saudi riyals, sometimes from more than 200 million to 300 million Saudi riyals, or around 53 million to 80 million US dollars, depending on the edition. Imagine a beauty contest where the reward is not a flower crown or a trophy, but enough money to buy mansions, farms, supercars, and entire new futures. And the judging is serious. Camels are evaluated for features that most travelers would never notice. Judges look at the droop of the lips, the width of the skull, the height of the hump, the length of the eyelashes, the posture, the elegance of the walk, and the overall presence of the animal. In this world, beauty is not soft and delicate. It is tall, desert-born, heavy-lipped, long-necked, and powerful enough to look royal against an empty horizon. But wherever there is money, fame, and pressure, there is temptation. In recent years, some owners were caught using cosmetic procedures on competing camels. Botox, silicone fillers, and other illegal enhancements were discovered. The goal was simple: make the lips fuller, the nose more attractive, the face more dramatic, and the animal more likely to impress the judges. Dozens of camels were disqualified. It sounds almost absurd, but it also reveals how serious this competition really is. These were not casual tricks. These were attempts to reshape desert royalty for prize, money, and prestige. Then comes the racing side, and it feels like science fiction wearing a traditional robe. In the past, camel racing used human jockeys. Today, many races use small remote-controlled robot jockeys. These devices can weigh between about 9 and 12 pounds, or around 4 to 5 kilograms. They are strapped onto the camel, dressed in racing colors, and equipped with a mechanical whip arm and speakers. The trainer drives nearby in a vehicle, speaking into a radio, and the camel hears a familiar voice coming from the robot on its back. Picture the scene. A line of camels launches across the desert track. Beside them, luxury SUVs race along the edge, owners shouting commands, dust rising behind the wheels, robots bouncing on the saddles, and the animals responding not to strangers, but to the voices they know. It is ancient Arabia mixed with modern engineering. Sand, speed, bloodlines, radio signals, and pride all moving together under the same burning sky. What makes this story so fascinating is not only the strangeness. It is the way Saudi Arabia protects tradition while transforming the tools around it. The camel remains an old symbol of survival, patience, wealth, and tribal identity. But now it also belongs to a world of prize pools, veterinary inspections, artificial intelligence-style race systems, media coverage, and scandals that travel around the internet. So when you see a camel in Saudi Arabia, do not see only a desert animal. See a living monument. See a creature that once carried people across impossible distances and now carries family reputation, national memory, and sometimes millions of US dollars on its back. In Saudi Arabia, even the camel world has glamour, controversy, technology, and drama. And somehow, that makes perfect sense. Number 8. Wealth at the edge of imagination. There is a point where wealth no longer feels like money. It becomes an atmosphere. It appears in hotel lobbies, shopping malls, private villas, wedding halls, desert camps, and quiet gestures that outsiders may not notice at first. In Saudi Arabia, wealth can be loud, golden, and impossible to ignore. But it can also be hidden behind a closed door, given away during Ramadan, or used by people who understand that generosity and status often walk side by side. Stories of extreme wealth in the kingdom can sound almost unreal. In luxury spaces, you may hear about chocolates wrapped in 24-karat gold leaf, specialty coffee served like jewelry, phones covered in diamonds, and water bottles designed less for thirst than for display. In some stories, gold is not only something kept in a safe, it becomes something you can buy from a machine, a symbol of a country where old ideas of treasure meet the speed of modern retail. And then there are the animals. For years, wealthy young men in parts of the Gulf became famous online for keeping lions, cheetahs, and tigers as symbols of power. Saudi authorities have tightened rules around this, and such ownership is not something travelers should treat as normal or legal. But the image remains powerful. A young man sitting beside a full-grown predator in a private room. A rare white lion said to be worth around $200,000. Prime cuts of meat placed before an animal that once belonged to the wild. It is not just about keeping a pet, it is about turning danger itself into a kind of luxury performance. But if you only look at Saudi wealth through gold, supercars, and wild animals, you miss the deeper contradiction. This is also a society where giving is a religious duty, a social expectation, and a powerful part of daily life. In Islam, charity is not decoration. It is woven into the moral structure of the community. During Ramadan, that spirit becomes even more visible. Food is distributed. Money changes hands quietly. Families send help to relatives, workers, neighbors, strangers, and people they may never meet again. Walk through a wealthy district during Ramadan, and the air itself can feel different. After sunset, tables fill. Dates, water, rice, meat, soup, tea, and sweets move from homes and restaurants to people breaking their fast. Some acts are public, others are private. The important thing is that giving is not treated as a rare event. It is part of the rhythm of the holy month. And yet, here comes the paradox. Begging is illegal in Saudi Arabia and is often treated as a form of fraud, especially when organized networks exploit public generosity. The country encourages charity, but it also tries to control how charity flows. That creates one of the most fascinating tensions in Saudi life. A society can be deeply generous and deeply suspicious at the same time. One famous story often repeated in the region tells of a blind woman named Aisha who spent decades begging in Jeddah. When she died, reports claimed she had accumulated property, gold, jewelry, and an estate worth close to about $800,000. Whether told as a warning, legend, or documented case, the story survives because it captures something people recognize. In a place where generosity is powerful, someone can learn to turn sympathy into a business. That is what makes wealth in Saudi Arabia so complex. It is not only about luxury, it is about faith, reputation, family honor, public image, private duty, and the invisible economy of giving. The same country that builds gold-covered lifestyles also builds massive charitable networks. The same society that celebrates generosity also prosecutes those who manipulate it. So when you travel through Saudi Arabia, do not only look for the tallest tower or the most expensive car, look for the quieter signs. A worker receiving a meal after sunset, a family sending food to strangers, a luxury mall shining beside a donation campaign. A culture where wealth can become spectacle, but charity can become identity. At the edge of imagination, Saudi wealth is not simply about having more. It is about what money is supposed to prove, what it is supposed to protect, and what it is supposed to give back. Number 7. Engineering against the desert. In Saudi Arabia, the desert is not just a landscape, it is an opponent. It presses against cities with heat, dust, distance, and silence. It turns simple movement into a challenge. It can make a short walk feel like crossing an invisible wall of fire. And yet, instead of retreating from it, Saudi Arabia has chosen something far more ambitious. It is trying to engineer life around the desert itself. You can see this most clearly in Mecca during the Hajj. In 2026, about 1,707,301 pilgrims performed the pilgrimage. About 1,546,655 came from outside Saudi Arabia. while about 160,646 came from inside the kingdom. Imagine that human river moving through the holy city. Different languages, different clothes, different faces, all flowing toward the same sacred center under a sun that does not soften for anyone. To protect that movement, Saudi Arabia has built systems most cities on Earth would never need to imagine. At the Grand Mosque, one of the largest cooling systems of its kind, operates with a capacity of about 155,000 refrigeration tons. That number sounds technical, but picture it this way. It is not cooling a hotel lobby or a shopping mall. It is cooling one of the most important religious spaces on Earth, helping keep the air around 22 to 24 degrees Celsius, or around 72 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, while the world outside can feel brutally hot. For a pilgrim arriving after hours of walking, that difference is not comfort alone. It can feel like mercy. The body steps from heat into shade, from pressure into breath, from desert air into a space where engineering becomes part of spiritual survival. Around the holy sites, the battle against heat continues on the ground itself. Saudi authorities have tested and expanded reflective pavement, including white rubberized surfaces that can reduce the heat felt underfoot. In places where pilgrims walk for long periods, this matters deeply. The ground in a desert city can become painfully hot, especially for people who are tired, elderly, or moving in crowds. A cooler walkway is not just an urban experiment, it is protection for millions of feet. Then come the misting corridors. Water hangs in the air like a thin artificial cloud, softening the path for pilgrims moving through exposed spaces. In another country, mist might be used to make a restaurant patio pleasant. Here, it becomes part of a survival system for one of the largest annual religious journeys on Earth. The desert remains outside, but for a few moments, people pass through a corridor of engineered relief. And then Saudi ambition moves from sacred infrastructure to pure futurism. In the northwestern desert, the kingdom has promoted the line, one of the most astonishing urban ideas ever proposed. The plan imagines a linear city stretching about 170 kilometers, or around 106 miles, across the desert. It would rise about 500 meters, or around 1,640 feet, into the sky, while measuring only about 200 meters, or around 656 feet, wide. From a distance, it sounds less like a city, and more like a blade of glass placed across the sand. The idea is almost impossible to ignore. No traditional roads, no ordinary traffic. Homes, schools, hospitals, entertainment, parks, and services stacked vertically instead of spreading endlessly across the land. A high-speed rail system would connect the full distance, turning what looks on a map like a long desert scar into a futuristic corridor of movement. But this is Saudi Arabia, so even the dream has controversy. Reports have suggested delays, revisions, and possible reductions in the original ambition. And maybe that uncertainty is part of what makes the line so fascinating. It sits somewhere between a real construction project and an architectural question asked at the scale of a nation. Can a country build a new way of living before the old problems of heat, cars, sprawl, and climate catch up with everyone else? That is the story running through this entire kingdom. In Mecca, engineering protects pilgrims from the heat. In the desert, reflective pavement and misting corridors turn survival into design. In the northwest, the line imagines a city that tries to escape the logic of cities altogether. Saudi Arabia is not just surviving the desert, it is trying to redesign how humans live inside it. Number 6. 7,000 years under the sand. Saudi Arabia is often introduced as a future project, a place of glass towers, desert cities, artificial intelligence, and impossible construction dreams. But the real shock is that its past may be even bigger than its future. Long before oil, long before skyscrapers, long before highways crossed the desert, people were already building, praying, trading, farming, and carving memory into stone across this land. For much of the modern era, many outsiders imagined the Arabian Peninsula as an empty space between greater civilizations. They saw it as a desert people crossed, not a place where history was made. But the sand has been keeping secrets. And now, little by little, those secrets are coming back into the light. Start with the Mustatils. The name simply means rectangles in Arabic, but that modest word hides one of the most mysterious archaeological discoveries in the kingdom. Across lava fields, desert plains, and remote rocky landscapes, Researchers have identified more than 1,600 of these ancient stone structures. Some are only about 20 meters long, or around 66 feet. Others stretch up to about 600 meters, or around 1,969 feet, longer than several city blocks laid end-to-end in the open desert. Now imagine standing beside one at sunrise. The stones are low, weathered, and quiet. There are no crowds, no temple columns, no golden statues, no obvious explanation, just a strange rectangle of ancient stone lying under a sky that feels too large. These structures are believed to be around 7,000 years old. That means they were already ancient before the pyramids of Egypt rose from the desert and before Stonehenge became a circle of mystery in Britain. Why were they built? That is the part that pulls you closer. Some researchers believe they may have been connected to ritual gatherings, belief systems, or ancient ceremonies involving animals and community life. But no one can say with complete certainty. The mustatils remain like messages written in a language we have not fully learned to read. Then travel to Khaybar Oasis, where another layer of Saudi Arabia appears. Here, archaeologists have studied Al-Nada, a Bronze Age town hidden within a landscape of volcanic stone, palms, and desert silence. It covered about 2.6 hectares, or around 6.4 acres. That may sound small on paper, but picture a compact ancient settlement protected by walls, surrounded by harsh land, and filled with the daily movements of families, workers, animals, smoke, tools, and food. Al-Nata dates from about 2,400 before the Common Era to about 1,300 before the Common Era. At one point, it may have been home to around 500 residents. That is not just a number. That is a living community. Children running between houses, farmers managing precious water, guards watching the edges of the settlement, traders arriving with news from other places. In a land often dismissed as empty, there was planning, defense, and organized life. And then there is Hegra, the jewel that changed how the world looked at Saudi history. Known also as Mada in Saleh, Hegra was built by the Nabateans, the same civilization connected to Petra in Jordan. More than 2,000 years ago, they carved monumental tombs directly into sandstone outcrops, leaving facades so sharp and elegant that they still seem almost freshly cut. Walk through Hegra, and the desert becomes a gallery of stone. Tomb entrances rise from isolated rocks, inscriptions sit above doorways like warnings from another world. Wind moves through the open valley, and every cliff seems to be watching. For centuries, many local people avoided the site, believing it carried a curse. That fear helped preserve it, leaving the tombs silent while time moved around them. In 2008, Hegra became Saudi Arabia's first UNESCO World Heritage Site. But the title only hints at what the place feels like. Hegra is not simply a ruin. It is proof that Saudi Arabia was never just a desert between empires. It was a crossroads, a homeland, a sacred landscape, and a stage where civilizations left marks deep enough to survive thousands of years. So before you look at Saudi Arabia only as a country racing toward tomorrow, look down at the ground beneath your feet. Under the sand are rectangles older than legends, towns older than many kingdoms, and tombs that still hold the silence of ancient travelers. The future here may be spectacular, but the past is already astonishing. Number 5. Hajj, Mecca, Medina, and food. To understand Saudi Arabia, you cannot look only at oil fields, desert towers, or futuristic cities. You have to look toward Mecca, because every year, this city becomes the center of one of the largest annual religious gatherings on Earth. In Hajj 2026, about 1.7 million pilgrims came to perform the pilgrimage. Try to imagine that number not as a statistic, but as a moving ocean of people, white garments flowing through the streets, voices rising in prayer, families separated by language, color, country, and distance, yet moving with the same purpose toward the same sacred center. Some arrive from nearby towns inside Saudi Arabia. Others travel from islands, mountain villages, megacities, and faraway countries they may never leave again after this journey. For Muslim pilgrims, Mecca is not simply a destination. It is the place they have faced in prayer their entire lives. Every day, from mosques in Indonesia, apartments in London, desert towns in Africa, and homes across the United States, millions turn toward this city. Then, for Hajj, some of them finally stand there in person. The direction of prayer becomes a real place beneath their feet. But for non-Muslim travelers, Mecca remains closed. This is one of the strongest boundaries in Saudi Arabia. No amount of money, fame, diplomatic status, or curiosity changes it. The city is protected as a sacred space, and specialized access rules keep it reserved for Muslims. For outsiders, that can make Mecca feel even more mysterious. You may see it in documentaries, aerial images, or pilgrim stories, but you cannot simply walk in as a tourist. Medina, the second holy city, has a different feeling. Parts of the city have become more accessible to non-Muslim visitors in recent years, especially areas around historic sites and public spaces. The interior of the Prophet's Mosque remains restricted, but the surrounding atmosphere can still be felt from outside. Medina moves at a gentler rhythm than many Saudi cities. Its streets carry the weight of faith, memory, scholarship, and hospitality. Even if you cannot enter every sacred space, you can sense that the city is built around reverence. And then there is the food, the part of this story many travelers never expect. For centuries, pilgrims arrived in the Hijaz region from across the Muslim world. They came by sea, by caravan, by ship, by road, and eventually by airplane. They brought languages, spices, cooking methods, rice dishes, breads, sweets, and memories of home. Over time, Jeddah, Mecca, and Medina became more than holy cities. They became a crossroads of flavor. That is why Hijazi food feels different from what many people imagine when they think of Saudi cuisine. It carries the warmth of Arabia, but also the echoes of the Indian Ocean spice routes. Kabsa, one of the most beloved dishes in the kingdom, is a perfect example. It may bring together fragrant rice, slow-cooked meat, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, dried lime, and other spices that turn one plate into a map of old trade routes. In Jeddah, you may taste this history in a family restaurant near the old city. Steam rises from rice. Meat falls apart with the touch of a spoon. Arabic coffee follows the meal, bitter and fragrant, balanced by sweet dates. Around you, the Red Sea wind moves through streets that once received merchants, sailors, and pilgrims from across the world. So Hajj is not only a religious event, it is also a force that shaped Saudi culture. It built roads, kitchens, neighborhoods, markets, and memories. Every pilgrim who arrived left something behind: a spice, a story, a recipe, a word, a gesture. And in the Hijaz, you can still taste that history. And if the flavors and sacred history of the Hijaz surprised you, hit like and subscribe, because Saudi Arabia has many more stories hidden beyond the desert horizon. Number 4. The Green Mountains of Asir. Just when you think Saudi Arabia is nothing but sand, the road begins to climb and the desert disappears into fog. The air changes first. It feels cooler, softer, almost impossible after the heat of Riyadh or Jeddah. Then the colors shift. Brown plains give way to green slopes, stone villages, cloud-covered ridges, and mountain roads that twist like ribbons along the edge of the sky. This is Asir, one of the most surprising regions in Saudi Arabia. Its name means difficult in Arabic. And when you see the landscape, you understand why. The mountains rise close to about 10,000 feet, or around 3,000 meters, high enough to catch clouds and turn the usual Saudi image upside down. Here, the kingdom does not feel like an endless desert. It feels like a hidden highland world, where mist moves between peaks and summer air can feel like a gift. Asir receives seasonal rains, and those rains change everything. Terraced hillsides turn green. Valleys hold patches of farms and villages. The smell of dust is replaced by the scent of plants, wet stone, and mountain air. For Saudi families escaping the fierce heat of the lowlands, this region can feel like a natural retreat. A place where you can walk outside without feeling the sun pressing against your skin like a wall. One of the most beautiful places in Asir is Rijal Al-Ma, a historic village that looks as if it has been stacked carefully against the mountainside. The village is known for about 60 traditional palaces and houses, many built from stone, clay, and wood. Some rise several stories high, with dark stone walls and bright painted details that catch the eye against the rugged cliffs behind them. From a distance, the village almost looks like a fortress. Watching over the valley below, walking through Rijal Al-Ma feels different from walking through a museum. This is not history locked behind glass. It is history built into walls, windows, steps, and narrow passages. You can imagine traders arriving from the Red Sea coast, villagers carrying goods through mountain paths, families looking out from wooden balconies, and generations living with the same dramatic view of clouds and stone. But Asir is not only famous for its villages, it is also home to one of the most unexpected traditions in the kingdom, the flower men. In parts of the region, men have worn fresh flower crowns for generations. These crowns may be made from wild basil, jasmine, marigolds, and fragrant mountain herbs. To outsiders, it can seem surprising at first, especially in a country often described through strict images of masculinity and tradition. But here, flowers are not a costume. They are identity, scent, medicine, memory, and pride. Picture a man standing in the mountain light, wearing a traditional garment, a dagger at his waist, and a crown of fresh flowers on his head. Behind him, clouds drift across green slopes. The image feels almost unreal, yet it belongs deeply to this place. That is what makes Asir unforgettable. It breaks the simple story. It reminds you that Saudi Arabia is not one landscape, one culture, or one mood. It is desert and mountain, heat and mist, ancient stone and living tradition. And in Asir, the kingdom reveals one of its best-kept secrets, a Saudi Arabia that blooms above the clouds. Number 3. Jeddah, Balad, and the Red Sea. If Riyadh feels like the future rising from the desert, Jeddah feels like a doorway left open to the sea. The air is different here. Softer, saltier, more relaxed. Instead of endless desert silence, you hear traffic, gulls, street voices, coffee cups, prayer calls, and the invisible breath of the Red Sea moving through the city. The heart of Old Jeddah is Balad, a historic district where the past does not feel polished or distant. It feels close enough to touch. In 2014, Balad became a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but long before that title, it was already one of the great urban treasures of Arabia. Merchants, pilgrims, sailors, and travelers passed through these lanes for centuries, turning Jeddah into the sea gate of Mecca and one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the kingdom. Walk through Balad, and the buildings seem to carry the sea inside their walls. Many old houses were built from coral stone taken from the Red Sea, giving them a texture unlike ordinary brick or concrete. The surfaces look warm, weathered, and alive, as if the reef itself was lifted from the water and shaped into a city. Above the narrow streets, wooden Roshan balconies project from the upper floors. These carved screens were not just decoration. They caught the sea breeze, softened the sunlight, and allowed families to look out without being fully seen. In the late afternoon, when the heat begins to fade, Balad becomes even more atmospheric. Shadows stretch across old doors. Shop lights flicker on. The smell of grilled meat, cardamom coffee, incense, and fresh bread drifts through the alleys. A visitor can stand there and imagine ships arriving from Africa, India, Egypt, Yemen, and beyond, carrying spices, fabrics, stories, and people who would leave small traces in the soul of Jeddah. Then, not far from the old city, the modern coast announces itself with a record that is impossible to ignore. King Fahd Fountain sends seawater about 312 meters into the air, or around 1,024 feet. To picture that, imagine water rising higher than many skyscrapers, lifted from the Red Sea and thrown into the sky like a white spear of mist. At night, lights turn it into a glowing column visible from far across the city. It is part fountain, part landmark, part signal that Jeddah has always belonged to the water. But the real secret lies beyond the waterfront. The Red Sea coast near Jeddah has coral reefs, clear water, and marine life that can rival some of the world's most famous dive destinations. Yet compared with places like the Maldives or the Great Barrier Reef, it still feels strangely undiscovered by mass tourism. Beneath the surface are coral gardens, bright fish, blue water, and a silence that makes the city above feel far away. This may be the rare moment when the Red Sea still feels like a secret. The resorts are coming. The international attention is growing. The new Saudi tourism story is only beginning. But right now, Jeddah still offers something precious. A coast where history, trade, faith, architecture, and ocean light meet before the crowds fully arrive. That is why Jeddah is not just a city beside the sea. It is Saudi Arabia looking outward, breathing salt air, remembering its old routes, and quietly inviting the world to discover what has been waiting on the shore. Number 2. AlUla, the open-air museum. There are places where history is kept behind glass. AlUla is different. Here, History stands in the open air, under the desert sun, carved into cliffs, hidden inside valleys, and scattered across sandstone formations that look as if they were shaped by giants. The moment you arrive, AlUla does not feel like an ordinary destination. It feels like a landscape with memory. The rocks rise in warm shades of gold, rust, and red. The silence is wide. The wind moves slowly through the valley, as if it is carrying stories from kingdoms most travelers have never heard of. Dedan, Lihian, and the Nabateans all left marks here. One civilization layered over another until the desert became a book written in stone. The most famous chapter is Hijra, a Nabatean city more than 2,000 years old. If Petra in Jordan is the world-famous sister, Hijra is the quieter one, standing in Saudi Arabia with a mystery that feels almost untouched. Monumental tombs are carved directly into sandstone cliffs and isolated rock faces. Their entrances look sharp, elegant, and strangely alive, as though the craftsmen only stepped away yesterday. Walking through Hijra, you do not just look at ruins, you feel watched by time. Each carved facade seems to ask the same question. Who built this? Who was buried here? And why did the desert keep it so silent for so long? Then the journey continues to Elephant Rock, one of AlUla's most unforgettable natural wonders. From the right angle, the massive sandstone formation looks exactly like an elephant standing alone in the desert, its trunk reaching down toward the sand. No architect designed it. No artist planned it. Wind, weather, and time slowly shaped the stone until nature accidentally created a monument. AlUla has already welcomed around 300,000 visitors in recent years, and the kingdom hopes to attract about 1 million visitors annually by 2030. But for now, it still carries the rare feeling of a place being discovered before the crowds fully arrive. And when night falls, AlUla becomes even more powerful. The sky opens above the desert with stars so clear they seem close enough to touch. This region is also being developed as a dark sky destination, where travelers can look upward and feel the same ancient wonder that caravans, traders, and desert peoples may have felt long ago. At night, AlUla feels like a place where the desert is not empty, but full of time. Number 1. Diriyah, where the kingdom began. Every journey through Saudi Arabia eventually leads back to Diriyah, not because it is the tallest, richest, or most futuristic place in the kingdom, but because this is where the story began, on the edge of modern Riyadh, where highways, towers, and new districts now stretch across the desert. Diriyah sits like a memory made of mud brick. In the 15th century, this valley became home to a settlement that would later grow into the birthplace of the first Saudi state. Long before oil changed the kingdom, long before airports brought visitors from every continent, this was a place of walls, palms, narrow lanes, tribal alliances, religious identity, and desert power. Walking through Diriyah feels different from walking through a museum. The color of the building seems to belong to the land itself. The walls are made from earth, not marble. Their texture carries heat, dust, age, and silence. You can almost imagine riders arriving from the desert, families moving through shaded courtyards, and leaders making decisions that would echo across centuries. Turaif, the historic heart of Diriyah, became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2010. That recognition placed this old mud brick district on the world map, but Saudi Arabia is not treating it as a quiet ruin. Diriyah is now being transformed into one of the kingdom's most ambitious cultural tourism projects, with major development planned toward 2030. The idea is bold. Instead of hiding the past behind glass, Saudi Arabia is trying to rebuild a living heritage destination around it. Luxury hotels, museums, restaurants, walking districts, and cultural spaces are being designed to rise from the same architectural language as the old city. The goal is not only to show visitors where Saudi Arabia came from, but to let them feel that origin under their feet. And this is where the entire journey becomes clear. Saudi Arabia is a country of impossible contrasts. It has ancient tombs in the desert and mirrored cities planned for the future. It has holy cities closed to some travelers and new tourist zones opening to the world. It has oil, wealth, mountain villages, coral coastlines, camel festivals, digital youth culture, and a capital that wakes after sunset. Diriyah reminds you that all of this did not appear from nowhere. Beneath the speed, money, and ambition is a much older story of place, belief, family, and power. Saudi Arabia is not asking the world to understand it slowly. It is changing so quickly that the old image of the country is already out of date. And perhaps the most fascinating thing about this kingdom is that its next chapter is still being written in front of our eyes. Hello everyone, and welcome to our travel channel. We are two passionate girls behind this journey, working together to explore beautiful places, unique cultures, local food, and inspiring stories from around the world. Every video we create is made with care, from researching destinations and planning, editing, and sharing the best moments with you. Our goal is to bring you closer to the world, one journey at a time, and help you discover places you may have never seen before. If you enjoy our travel videos, please support us by giving this video a like, subscribing to our channel, and turning on the notification bell so you will not miss our next adventure. Your support means so much to us and motivates our team to keep exploring and creating more amazing travel stories for you.